Probably 7 out of every 10 clients that I work with come to me and say, oh, I went to a broker or I went to my bank and they gave me an agreement in principle and I spent 2-3 months looking for a house, negotiated the price, and now they won't give me the mortgage. The reason why that is because 9 times out of 10, that bank or that broker did not do a full assessment, do the full due diligence to make sure that that agreement in principle would convert into a mortgage offer. I would recommend that you go to a broker because a broker is going to give you more choice. So that's when they're going to look at your pay slips. They're going to look at your outgoings. They're going to do an affordability assessment to see how much of a mortgage you can get. Once they do that, they're going to get you something called an agreement in principle. Now, if you've been looking for a home, you will know that estate agents, that's one of the first things that they ask you. Do you have an agreement in principle? Now, an agreement in principle is super important and it's kind of not important. What do I mean by that? Well, an agreement in principle is just that. It's an agreement in principle. It isn't usually validated by the lender. So I could go to, the Halifax website right now and say that Hope's income is $500,000 a month and she has a £90,000 balance, and it's going to give me an affordability assessment based on that. It's going to produce an AIP or agreement in principle. Sometimes it's called a decision in principle. Sometimes it's called a mortgage in principle. It's going to do it based on the figures that I put in. I don't have to prove the figures. So at my firm, at Charles Crown, what we don't do an agreement in principle that will not convert into a mortgage offer. So we do all of the due diligence up front. Probably 7 out of every 10 clients that I work with come to me and say, oh, I went to a broker or I went to my bank and they gave me an agreement in principle and I spent 2-3 months looking for a house, negotiated the price, and now they won't give me the mortgage. The reason why that is because 9 times out of 10, that bank or that broker did not do a full assessment, do the full due diligence to make sure that that agreement in principle would convert into a mortgage offer. And also, the other thing to keep in mind, the agreement in principle is assessing you as an individual or you as a couple. So the bank might say, yes, we will lend Hope £1 million, right? But the property she finds, they may not want to lend on that property. This is why it's so important that if your broker does offer the service, I know I do offer it, if your broker offers the service of helping you negotiate, let your broker do it. Last week or the week before, I saved a client £2,500 just by them letting me support them with the negotiation. I do this every day, all right? You are not going to be able to negotiate with an estate agent as well as I can, because the estate agent works for who? The estate agent works for the seller. The estate agent's job is to get as much money out of the buyer as possible, which is why it's important, if your broker does offer the service of negotiation, let them do it. Let me do it. I will save you money. And that means when the estate agent is contacting you and you're at work, you don't have to sneak off into a room, or, you have someone between 9 and 5 negotiating that deal for you. It will save you money, and also it will give us an opportunity to find out if there might be something about the property that would make it unmortgageable, or if it's a short lease, things that you wouldn't know to ask. So first the financial assessment, then the agreement in principle, then the negotiation. Once the offer is accepted, then we would instruct a solicitor. From the very beginning, you should start looking for a solicitor. As I said, don't cut corners on the solicitor, but you should look for one very early on, because once things start moving, they start moving really fast. So once the offer is accepted, we'll get the solicitor involved, and then we'll complete what's called a full mortgage application. This is when the bank or the lender starts to ask for the information to validate the information that was put in at the agreement in principle stage. So they'll usually ask for 3 months pay slips, 3 months bank statements. They'll ask for proof of identification. They may ask for other things. If there's anyone above the age of 18 living in that property, that person will have to sign what's called a deed of consent. So this is the point where they start to gather all of the information to make the full mortgage offer. The full mortgage offer can take 1 week, 2 weeks. It shouldn't take more than 3 weeks for the underwriters to start doing that process. As part of that process, they're going to do a valuation. So the valuation is not a survey. The valuation is the bank assessing how much they think the property is worth. This is also why it's so important that you negotiate well, because the house that you're buying, you may have had an offer accepted for $400,000, but the bank might go out there and say, nope, we think it's worth $380,000. Then you're going to have a problem because there's a £20,000 gap. So you're going to do the valuation. Some lenders charge for the valuation. Some products come with a free valuation. The bank will then come back and say, yes, we think it's worth what you're paying for it. Then what they'll be able to do is finish the underwriting and do the full mortgage offer. Once they've made the offer is usually good for about 6 months. So the bank is now saying, yes, we will lend Hope £5,000. Yes, we will lend her that money on that property. And for the next 6 months, this is the rate, this is the payments that we're agreeing to. If you're working with a broker, this is a great tip. If you're working with a broker, if you're working with me, let's just say we get you the best rate available today. Then the Bank of England meets and the Bank of England reduces rates, and that lender reduces rates on that product. It would have to be on that product. I will switch you to a lower rate. So if rates go up, you're protected. But if rates go down, part of my job is to switch you to that lower rate. Now, once the mortgage offer has been offered to the client, for the most part, it now switches over to your solicitor and the seller's solicitor. They communicate. I won't disappear if I'm your broker, but most of my job is done at that point because I got you the mortgage offer. This is when the searches, the survey, if you choose to do a survey, a RIC survey. So that's when you can pay a company to go in and check out the property. I will caution you, they always find damp, unless it's a brand new home. They always find some level of damp. There's a lot of red on the report usually. Don't be too alarmed. But if you feel that you don't want to proceed with the purchase until you've done a survey, make sure you hire a RICS surveyor and get them to go in and look at the property. I put solicitor stuff here because this is when the solicitors do the searches and they communicate with each other, go through the contracts. Then there'll be an exchange date. Then there will be a completion date. That's when you get the keys. Remember, when you go to a mortgage broker, you're not looking for a mortgage, you're looking for a home. So ultimately, what you're trying to accomplish is that completion date. As I said, the process is only as fast as the slowest person. So don't just shop based on price. One of the things that I've learned in my 30 years of finance experience, when people are shopping for a product, they think about price. When they need to use the product, they think about service. So this is similar to what Hope and I were discussing. People have these loyalties to these providers, and maybe they think it's because they're the cheapest. But if something goes wrong, you want to know that you are going to get good customer service. So make sure you pick the right solicitor, make sure you pick the right broker. And once we get to that point where the offer is in place, I will have the conversation with you about your protection. So that's income protection, that would be critical illness protection and life cover. Once we get towards the end of that process, I'm going to introduce you to Hope, that Hope can talk to you about the utilities, the broadband, and other things. Because we want to get you in that home, and we want to have you saving money and paying as little as possible for the best services.